joined us today for the September 2024 edition of our monthly talk series. Today's talk is titled Tamil Bhakti Literature, an Introduction, and is being delivered by Professor Madhusudhanan Kalaichelvan. I'm sure most of you understand the term Bhakti Literature and what it means. Especially if you belong to the south of India, in all probability, you would have read, sung, or heard at least some of these texts. For record, Bhakti literature refers to the devotional and religious texts that originated essentially in the south of India between the 5th and 15th century CE and then spread throughout the country. It was socio-reformist in nature and applicable to the local language, and the emphasis was essentially on individual devotion and how to express it to a personal God. With reference to Tamil Nadu, we have a fantastic repository of Bhakti literature belonging both to the Shaivite and Vaishnavite sects, composed and sung by the Nayanmars and Azhwars respectively. These were essentially composed between the 5th and 9th century CE, and these saint poets traveled extensively to various pilgrimage towns to sing about the temples there. But in their verses, they not only composed about the temples and the deities, they also included enormous detail about the lay of the land, the city where the temple is located, the landmarks and characters of the city, the flora and fauna, the kind of people who lived there, and their socio-economic lifestyle. Thus, the Bhakti texts of Tamil Nadu are actually historic documents that record the religious, spiritual, and cultural ethos of those times. We have Professor Madhusudhanan Kalaichelvan to introduce us to the Bhakti texts of Tamil Nadu and delve into what is it that makes them special and relevant even in today's context. A very warm welcome to you, Madhu. Yeah. Before we move on to the main program, as always, I'd like to give you a brief introduction about Tamil Heritage Trust, which is our organization. Tamil Heritage Trust or Tamil Paramparya Arakattalai is an organization that was started by a group of like-minded volunteers almost 14 years back. The main objective was to understand, appreciate, celebrate, and disseminate information regarding various aspects of Indian heritage and history, not just for the erudite and the scholarly, but the average enthusiastic public as well. Towards this end, Tamil Heritage Trust conducts a lot of programs throughout the year. Prominent amongst these are talks and seminars, and this monthly heritage talk. We have been having these talks continuously almost since 2010. Only the format changed from in-person talks to online post-corona. These are conducted on the first Saturday of every month, and as I already mentioned, we are in the midst of the September 2024 talk. Another event that we conduct is called the Pechu Kacheri or the Oratory Concert, and it takes place in the month of December to collaborate and coincide with the Margari Isai Kacheris of Chennai. Over 2 days, we curate a topic, and 8 to 10 experts delve into various aspects of the topic, covering it in detail. A third event which we have is more academic and scholarly in nature, and we call it the Indology Festival, conducted in the month of June. This is an online event which is spread across 6 days, where we have subject experts and in-depth research scholars analyzing the subject threadbare. We usually curate a topic which is not only relevant historically, but also has some current topical value. In June 2024, our Indology Festival was called Harappan Civilization, a Century of Discovery, and it was to commemorate century of the announcement to the world of the discovery of the Harappan civilization. At THT, we also have regular workshops and classes. We have one-day workshops on topics like how to see a museum, how to see a temple, etc., where anyone can enroll and participate. On and off, we have classroom sessions on topics like Grantham script, ancient Indian astronomy, ancient Indian mathematics, etc. Another program that we have is called the Alamar Away, which concentrates on the school teachers of Tamil Nadu. Over a series of weekend lectures, various aspects of history and heritage are discussed with these teachers, the idea being that they take it back to their school, further spreading awareness. Another event that we have, of which the second edition or second batch is going on right now, is called docent training. We have a series of theoretical and practical sessions where participants are trained to be docents in terms of having a clear understanding of history and heritage and how to disseminate the same to an average public or the tourist. Another activity which we have in the month of January every year, we call it the site seminar. This is largely an in-house activity and meant for our own education and self-enhancement. Once again, we zero in on a particular site anywhere in India, and over 3 to 4 months, our volunteers study this site, various aspects of this site, and we have extensive in-house seminars. Then, armed with all this knowledge, we go and visit the site and experience it in totality. We try to come back and document what we have seen. At THT, we have also instituted 2 awards. The first award is named after our co-founder and is called the THT Professor Swaminathan Award. This is given for individual contribution in the fields of Indian history and heritage. We are into the 5th year of this award, and currently we are scrutinizing the applications for the award 2024. The second award that we give is called the Venkaya Epigraphy Award. This is given for individual contribution in the field of epigraphy and is instituted by Sunita Madhavan, the great-granddaughter of V. Venkaya, who was the first official Indian epigraphist. THT has been given the responsibility of administering this award, and just about 2 months back, we gave out the award for 2024 to Dr. V. Vedachalam, an eminent epigraphist working with the Archaeological Department of Tamil Nadu. We have a dedicated YouTube channel. All our links to all our past talks are available here. Please subscribe to the channel and click on the bell icon to receive notifications of future events. We have a website. These are our social media handles. To join our mailing list, you may kindly mail us here. We are a voluntary organization. We do not have any dedicated financial backing. So any kind of contributions are welcome. You may use this QR code or address to donate generously. Now, that in a nutshell was about THT. Now, moving on to the main program. Now, I'm sure most of you would not only have heard of Madhusudan, but heard him either in person or online. A prolific speaker and heritage enthusiast, he actually really needs no introduction at all. However, for the benefit of those people who have met him for the first time today, here goes. As I already mentioned, he is a prolific speaker and heritage enthusiast. He is an architect by profession, a gold medalist in his post-graduation, currently pursuing his doctoral research on temple town planning. His areas of interest, and hence his talks, include a wide range of topics associated with heritage, religion, culture, and literature. Madhusudan regularly serves on government-instituted panels for conservation of temples in Tamil Nadu. An academic for more than a decade, mentoring students, he is also a nominated member of the Academic Council of the Dr. J. Jayalalitha Music and Finance University, Tamil Nadu. Madhusudanan is also a recipient of several awards. In fact, he further qualifies them by being the youngest to receive them. Some of his awards include Vedavalli Memorial Award in the field of South Indian heritage, Ilakya Chemmal, recognizing his mastery over Tamil literature, Saiva Tamil Arinyar from his Acharya, Sri Dharmapuram Adinam, and our own TH Professor Swaminathan Heritage Award. We are proud to say, he was the first recipient of this award in 2020. Madhusudanan also curates and conducts tours to places of architectural and cultural heritage, and is also a regular contributor to popular print media through his articles on history, heritage, epigraphy, and archaeology. I now hand over the screen to Madhu to take over from here. Once again, a very warm welcome to you, Madhu. I'll stop sharing the screen.
Madhu, you can share your screen.
Yeah.
Is it visible?
Yeah.
விண்ணாளும் தேவர்க்கும் மேலாய வேதியனை மண்ணாளும் மன்னவர்க்கும் மாண்பாகி நின்றானை தன்னார் தமிழளிக்கும் தன்பாண்டி நாட்டானை பெண்ணாளும் பாகனை பேணு பெருந்துறையில் கண்ணார் கடல் காட்டி நாகேனை ஆட்கொண்ட அண்ணாமலையானை பாடுதுங்கா நம்மானாய் சித்தம் தெளிவீர்கள் அத்தன் ஆரூரை பத்தி மலர்த்தூவ முக்தியாகுமே. Vanakkam and a very good evening to you all. Addressing THT audience is a matter of pleasure. In fact, the monthly talks have been an eye-opener to several of us here in Chennai. Has been going on for a little more than a decade now, with a wide range of topics being addressed. And in many cases, the documentation of these talks have helped us go back to them and get our doubts clarified. And post-COVID, thanks to switching over to the online platform where it has been made, it has enabled us to get scholars from far and wide. And so, yeah, thanks for this wonderful, the list of wonderful activities that THT has been engaged with. And thank you, Madam Gauri, for giving me this opportunity to address the audience on a subject which is very close to my heart. In fact, I was happy to get this topic finalized by you and a few other members. Thanks for the confidence that you have on me for handling a topic which is vast, like the Tamil Bhakti literature and introduction. So, wishing you all a very happy Vinayaka Chaturthi. I'd like to get started with the talk, Tamil Bhakti literature and introduction. This is a vast corpus of Tamil literature that's academically classified as Bhakti literature, and probably the longest running genre which had occupied the timeline of Tamil literature history, which is still active, which is still practiced, propagated. So trying to introduce this in an hour's time as such is a challenge. So I've just tried to pick things that makes it interesting with some basic introduction. So considering people who have only heard that Tamil Nadu has a rich corpus of literature termed as Bhakti literature, from audience of that sort, I'm just trying to explore a little into it and introduce some basics of Tamil literature, Bhakti literature in Tamil language. So, the Bhakti period, just in case to fix it, during the introduction of the talk, 5th century to 15th century was the given timeline. Undoubtedly, starting from around the 5th century, literature predominantly praising to the God, to the Almighty, and thanking him or her for all the benefits that he has blessed us with, has become a popular style in compositions. And we can be proud that such a genre first came up here in Tamil Nadu. Slowly, it picked up, kind of managed to travel across the south of India. And in the next 1,000 years, it was probably very active all over India. And whatever we call as the Indian faith system or the organized school of Hindu philosophical systems we have in place today, all of it has a great deal to do with the Bhakti movement. It was not a very organized movement per se. I think the word movement is restricted to academic circles. Mostly academicians who discuss Bhakti phase or Bhakti literature call it a movement. But it doesn't really seem like an organized attempt to spread the concept of Bhakti. But there seem to have been reasons which needed a change. A socio-religious change was felt, and slowly it picked up, and with the common public receiving it well, going beyond boundaries, trying to push its expanse to whatever limit possible, that has made it extremely welcomed by the common public. And so it has caught up from the 5th century and managed to spread all across India for the next 1,000 years. So, but today's phase of Tamil Bhakti literature that we're going to be dealing is restricted to the 5th to the 9th century. So that's kind of the early phase, the origin of a style called as Bhakti literature, the initial preceptors who laid the foundation, who traveled extensively for the time that they were active, pilgrimages across India, and managing to visit temples, temple towns, documenting the visits, documenting the deities, the people, all that seemed to have been quite a challenging task, which they have accomplished. So today's talk, the Bhakti literature phase, is restricted to the 5th to the 9th century, what can be called as the early phase. Nevertheless, the conclusion will include some topics about what happened after the 9th century. So the concept of bhakti, as old as the Vedic tradition, where you have probably the first ever documented verses, both as prayers and praises to the Almighty. The Vedic literature, as we can call it again academically, comprises of many forms of verses set to different meters, and predominantly the 4 Vedas, as we all know it, has the duty of praying to the Almighty and praising Him. Apparently, these 2 predominant activities seen through the Vedas, to praise and to pray, seem to be the central core of Bhakti literature also. Again, most of the academicians who well deep into the Bhakti literature, especially in Tamil Nadu, have definitely accepted that the Vedic literature and as an extension, the Itihasas and Puranas have paved way to the core content of the Bhakti literature. So this cannot be definitely identified as a completely independent movement. The conceptual base foundation for this definitely starts from the Vedic traditions, because the rituals and festivities, all of it has its own basis from there. Something similar to, whatever happened in Tamil Nadu before the Bhakti literature came into being, as we all know, the Sangam period, and there is a transition phase. Again, academically, by and large, we accept that the Sangam phase or the Sangam period was active till the 3rd, 4th century. But there were a couple of books that were compiled or authored much after this also, kind of a spillover, but predominantly we consider it to have been active from around the 3rd or the 4th century before Common Era to the 3rd or the 4th century of the Common Era. Bhakti phase kind of starts after it, but there has been a transition space, a space that gets sandwiched, a phase that gets sandwiched between the Sangam and the Bhakti phase. And that's when majority of the kavyas, as we see here in Tamil Nadu, be it Chilapatikaram or Manimegalai, or the earlier versions for it should have started. The earlier attempts for it should have started. In the Sangam literature, how do we look at religion? Well, there again, these 2 prominent gods of the Hindu pantheon, Shiva and Vishnu, have been described and praised for all the attributes as they are described and praised in the Vedas. For example, let us take Shiva to begin with. All the unique identities of Shiva, the matted hairlock, which is very unique to him, the 3rd eye on his forehead, the venom that got frozen in his throat, he carrying a trident, he taking up forms of Dakshinamurti or Gangadhara or Kalyana Sundara, Ardhanarishwara, all of these find references in the Tamil literature. He is identified with the symbols of Saiva tradition, like Vibhuti or Tiruniru and Rudraksham. All of these, the general attributes that we use to define the iconography of Shiva, his characteristics, his tone, his skin tone, the concept of wearing a hide, all of these are described at length. Similarly, his parakramas or the valorous acts like Tripura Samhara finds mention again in the Sangam literature. Now, if you consider Vishnu as another equally powerful and popular god in the Sangam literature, there again, the dark-hued complexion of Mahavishnu, he being a companion of Mahalakshmi, whose embodiment of wealth and prosperity, all of that is described here. He is identified or he's associated with Tiruvonam star, the Shravana Nakshatra, and his avatars as Rama, Krishna, Varaha, Vamana, Narasimha, all the popular avatars are again described here too. He's identified with the pranks that he performed as Krishna. He is identified as Rama, who had this very, the love that he had for his wife. So all these popular tales from the Itihasas and Puranas again form the central core when it comes to discussing religion, the predominant religion of the Sangam phase. So what happened at a very detailed level in the Bhakti literature, again, has its foundation from the Sangam literature. It kind of continues into a more case-specific or a field-specific work in the Sangam, in the Bhakti literature. So the base for it definitely comes from the Sangam literature, and the references for whatever has been described in the Sangam literature are all again from the Vedas, Itihasas, and the Puranas. So this seems to be a common chord that connects the country and its religious and philosophical foundation together. So Shiva and Vishnu in Sangam poetry. As the Sangam phase kind of came to a close, we had the kavyas that were attempted first, and that, of course, should have continued for a while. Then, from around the 5th century till the 9th century, the early phase of Bhakti literature is what is marked. Politically, the topography of Tamil Nadu was dominated by the Pallavas in the north and the Pandyas in the south. The Cholas were there, but not as popular or as imperial as they are after the 10th century. And it was during this phase we have a long list of saint poets, quite mystic in their approach, belonging to various sections of the social category, belonging to various castes and community from various parts of Tamil Nadu, all coming to the forefront to express their love for God and propagating it as a school. And very interestingly, this particular school takes two things as its main tool for the first time in the phase of Bhakti. One is addressing the concept or propagating the theology in regional language. Secondly, going beyond the concept of community or caste. Most of these members, be it the Nayanmars or the Azhwars, majority of them are from the supposedly the so-called lower section of the social strata. And they time and again talk about the free license for bhakti to anybody beyond caste, community, and gender also. And the importance to be given to a devotee being put at par with the God himself seem to have been emphasized time and again in their works too. So these are quite a new concept. Quite a new, as in this becomes the central area, the central core of focus in the Bhakti literature. So to praise a God or to pray to him or accepting a God and expressing your Bhakti needs nothing as a prerequisite is what has been dealt with in their works too. So the region, language, and caste. These are three key sociological aspects that forms the core of the Bhakti literature too. Now, to fix the timeline, of all the Nayanmars, the most popular is Thiruñana Sambandar, whose works are the first in the compilation of the Saiva Tirumurais. Now, the compilation of Saiva Bhakti literature, they're called as Tirumurais, and there are 12 volumes of Tirumurais, each of it authored by a different saint poet. And all through the presentation, I might be using this word padigam. There will be a frequent usage of this term called padigam. I'm not sure if there is an exact equivalent in English, but a padigam is a collection of 10 verses. Mostly the Azhwars and the Nayanmars, predominantly, they have sung about temples, temple towns, as a collection of 10 verses put together. So padi quite literally means 10. So a padigam is a collection of 10 verses. So Thiruñana Sambandar is identified as the most popular. Please be informed, he is not the first to have composed songs in Tamil. I'm picking up on Thiruñana Sambandar because there are some historical accuracy in the time that he was active. There are references to kings, historical figures, who were quite active during his time, with whom he has interacted. So it's kind of easy to identify a time period, an accurate time period in the timeline of Tamil history, where both him and his contemporary Thirunavukarasar or Appar were active. So that happens from around the 6th and predominantly around the 6th, 7th century. And it is there that we have references to Nayanmars who were quite active before both of these people, before Thiruñana Sambandar and Appar. They themselves have composed songs on devotees who were active here before their times. And that list includes Karaikal Ammayar. She apparently is the first devote to have composed songs in praise of Shiva in Tamil in a particular genre and expressed it as her love for Shiva. A very, very mystic character. Her timeline, we are not exactly sure, but if Jnana Sambandar was active around the 6th, 7th century and he addresses to Karaikal Ammayar as a very well-known devotee, we can conveniently position her somewhere around the 5th century. That was the time when the upper hand of the merchants through literature seems to have happened first. The same time when Silappatikaram was kind of being attempted to be authored and popularized. So it was that time when the power, the status of power kind of shifts from the king to the merchants, and Karaikal Ammayar belongs to the merchant community. Supposedly, she should have been active around the 4th, 5th century, and Jnana Sambandar follows her in the next century. So she is the first one to have composed songs, more interestingly, grouped them as a set of 10 or 11 and formulated what is called as a padigam. So thanks to her, we have this very beautiful way of bringing together a collection of 10 songs, and mostly the set of 10 songs is succeeded by a 11th verse, which generally talks about the benefits that one gets by chanting the set of 10 songs. So the 11th song is more like a Palashruti. Though it is called as Padigam, a collection of 10 songs, in most cases, we have a 11th song too. So she is the first one to have attempted composing a set of 11 such songs, and Jnana Sambandar kind of follows her. In fact, reverentially, the Shaivite devotees call it as the Padiga Peruvadi, the path to Shiva through the Padigams, or the collection of 10 songs. So the Padiga Peruvadi, the foundation for this path, Peruvadi, in fact, more like, the Rajapate that it is, was laid by Ammayar and Jnana Sambandar. Jnana Sambandar is very popular, but he himself has revered Karaikal Ammayar in his works. And so we can for sure place her somewhere around before his time. And then you have other Nayanmars like Tirumular, Chandesa Nayanar, Amarnithiyar, several of them who definitely belong to the time before Tirunjana Sambandar. So that being said, we can safely assume that from around the 4th, 5th century, the concept of bhakti to Shiva through service to his devotees and himself, and a selfless devotion has been acknowledged to be very great in nature, and they have been canonized as extremely popular devotees, and that tradition kind of continues from then. So from the early phase, we have Karaikal Ammayar, Amarnithiyar, Chandesa Nayanar, Tirumular, and others. But this tradition of singing about Shiva in Tamil is popularized big time by the 3 popular authors of Thevaram, which of course are Tirunjana Sambandar, Tirunavukkarasar, aka Appar Swamigal, and Sundaramurthy Swamigal. These 3 acharyas, Sambandar, Appar, and Sundarar, chronologically they are in the same order. They're coming down and singing all these compositions happens in the same order. Sambandar and Appar were of course contemporaries, and Sundarar comes a century after their time. So it was during their times that the concept of bhakti spread like wildfire, because they had traveled quite extensively. They've just traveled all around the country. At least the north and the south axis has been covered by them. And some of the shrines they have visited physically. Appar's attempt to visit Kashi and Kailash and all that has been very well documented. And Jnana Sambandar, of course, has restricted his travel to Srikalahasti in today's Andhra Pradesh. And from there, it is believed he got a divine vision of all the other popular shrines in the north of India. And so he has composed songs on those shrines staying at Kalahasti. And they, of course, their visit to Rameshwaram and praying to the deities at Sri Lanka. The 2 popular Padal Petra Sthalams of Sri Lanka, which includes Tirukoneshwaram and Tirukedicharam, both these temples from Rameshwaram is also recorded. So the landscape kind of spans from Mount Kailash in the north all the way up to north and central provinces of Sri Lanka. So that's the extent that they have attempted. After the Thevaram authors, we have Manikkavachakar, whose works have been extensively studied, translated, commented upon. Several extensions from his works as dance and music and various different tools of art has all happened. That is purely because of the depth of philosophy that he covers. So we can also ascertain that the development of this school of bhakti into a well-laid school of philosophy happens around the 8th, 9th century, the times of Manikkavachakar. Of course, there are direct and indirect references to Saiva Siddhanta as a philosophy in the works of Sambandar and Appar and Sundara, no doubt about it. But the depth of it and very clear-cut views being pronounced and comparing it with other similar religions and commenting upon the other philosophies and all that happens quite extensively through the works of Manikyavachakar. So we can kind of understand that it kind of got established during that time. Then, of course, you have other Tirumurais authored by various other acharyas about whom we'll see in a while. Now, coming over to the Vaishnavite school, the traditional belief system about the time period is definitely to be addressed in an academic gathering like this. The Guru Parampara Prabhavam as a work authored around the 12th, 13th century by Pinbalagiya Perumal Jiyar, a very, very significant acharya in the lineage of Vaishnava acharyas, is the first ever attempt to document the biography of the Azhwars and the acharyas in the same chronology as per their avataram. So the Vaishnavite tradition, the religious tradition, quite well believes that the Azhwars have been active from the previous yugas, especially the first three Azhwars, who have kind of been always grouped together. Mudalazhvargal, as they are addressed to, the first ones. So the first three of the 12 are placed somewhere around the Dwapara Yuga, which runs like a little more than 5,000 years now. And Nammalvar's avataram is very accurately said should have happened after almost 40 or 50 days after the birth of Kali Yuga, which also roughly goes back to like 5,100 odd years now. So that has a very, very, that's a religious belief there. The traditional belief system says that the Azhwars have been active since the previous Yuga. Academically speaking, this for a theory has not been accepted by historians and language experts and others also, but that is for a different discussion. But this is the traditional belief system. And the historical approach kind of varies because some of the Azhwars themselves have mentioned the names of a few kings. Interestingly, Nammalvar talks about two temple towns named after Pandya kings, who are all quite historic in nature. The life history of Periyalvar and Andal involves an identified Pandya king who himself was quite a Vaishnavite in his approach. So all of these kind of gives us clue that the chronology fits into a perfect academic timeline also, but the traditional timeline here varies. So with the Vaishnavites, I think we can safely say that there are two different timelines, one which is very religious in approach and the other which is historical in nature. And now the compilation. This is a brief introduction to when exactly and who are the prominent characters. Now to the compilation. I'll talk about the Tirumurais first. So in Shaiva tradition, the sacred literature are all together referred to as Tirumurai. Muraidudal is to offer or to pray, to narrate. All of it comes under Muraidudal. And this is more like the Tirumurai, which is the offerings made by the sacred saint poets to Lord Shiva. So it is a compilation of 11 volumes of work. Each of it is named after the chronology. The first Tirumurai, the second Tirumurai, the third Tirumurai, all the way up to the 12th Tirumurai. So they are together called as Tirumurai. Then each of them have a separate name too. For example, the first, second, and the third Tirumurai are only the compilation of works of Thiruñana Sambandar, who is the first one in the list of the Nalvar, and he's quite significant because of the way his life kind of took him and the contributions to both Shaiva Siddhantam, to the Shaiva school of thought, and to the society by and large, to the Vedic school, in fact. If anybody, if there is one character whom we all should pray to every day and thank him for having done all that he has done, for following a lifestyle that some of us have, it is Thiruñana Sambandar. His times were quite a testing time. Politically and the socio-religious topography also was quite challenging and quite testing. And it was him who managed to re-establish the otherwise weakening Vedic school and kind of protected it from Avaidic schools, including, of course, the Jainas and the Buddhists. So he's given immense importance in the school, and there are many traditions which puts him first, and his works are definitely given importance in any activity of the temple during special occasions, festivals, and more. So his works are all compiled into the first 3 Tirumurais, and they have a special name as Thirukkadaikappu. Though they are all together called as Thevaram, the first 7 Tirumurais are together called Thevaram. The first 3, all works of Thiruñana Sambandar alone, they are called as Thirukkadaikappu. Kadai literally means the end, the fair end. And this is a special name because Jnana Sambandar had this format of composing a 11th verse. After the first 10 verses, there is always a 11th verse where he talks about, it is more like the Palashruti, the benefits that one gets by chanting those 10 songs or that particular padikam. Most cases, the benefits are quite philosophical, but in many cases, they are also quite, for worldly pleasure, like to be educated well, or to find a good partner, to be cured of diseases, to earn wealth. So there are these issues also addressed. And so there is always this 11th verse, which acts like a Palashruti. Because of the presence of 11th verse, his works are together called by a special name, Thirukkadaikappu. And then you have the next set of 3 volumes, 4th, 5th, and the 6th, all authored by Appar Swamigal or Thirunavukarasar, and they are in fact specifically called as Thevaram. And the evolution of the word Thevaram and the various different contexts in which it has been used, and the various objects or traditions that it referred to during different times, all needs a separate monthly lecture by itself. It's a good 1.5 hour discussion to understand the evolution of the word Thevaram and all that it means during different times. Today, Thevaram simply refers to the first 7 Tirumurais, but to a more seasoned and a well-informed Shaivite, the mere mention of Thevaram would refer to the 4th, 5th, and the 6th Tirumurai, all compiled works of Appar Swamigal. Then you have the 7th Tirumurai, which is the works of Sundaramurti Swamigal. So 1st, 2nd, 3rd by Sambandar, called as Thirukkadaikappu, 4th, 5th, and 6th by Thirunavukarasar or Appar, called as Thevaram, 7th by Sundarar, called as Tirupattu. So the 7 Tirumurais are exclusively dedicated to the first 3, Jnana Sambandar, Appar, and Sundarar. The 8th and the most celebrated work is Tiruvachakam and Tirukkovayar, both authored by Manikavachakar. Tiruvachakam is a collection of his works sung under 51 different titles. So he chooses a theme and then composes songs. In some cases, you see like it is in a different meter. In some cases, it's more like a different verses, number of verses. You have one work called as Tirutha Chadagam, which is a compilation of 100 songs. And then you have something which is only 30 songs, 20 songs, 10 songs. So each of it has a theme under which he composes. So there are 51 such titles, and the compilation of these 51 titles are what are called as Tiruvachakam. They are so special that none but, the belief is that none but Sri Nataraja himself came and offered to be a scribe to document it all in palm leaf manuscripts. That's how important Tiruvachakam is. Then you have a very, very lesser spoken about work called as Tirukkovayar, which is extremely agam in genre. Now, Tamil Sangam literature has this very, very unique but very interesting classification tool with which you can classify all the poems that you see in the Sangam literature collection or even post-Sangam works. It's broadly, they are all classified as agam and puram, depending on the kind of emotions that each of the song brings out. If it is something very intimate or an internal emotion like love predominantly, it gets classified as agam. And mostly anything apart from that, like valor, charity, bravery, all of that, compassion, all of that gets classified as puram, or emotions that are quite external. So the internal emotions are quite intimate and external emotions are open source. So you have this tradition of classifying it as agam and puram. And this is very exclusive to Tamil, in fact, depending on the emotions, classifying songs or poetry, depending on the emotions. So Tirukkovayar is quite a deep work in agam genre, and it is so reserved that it is not popularly spoken out in public. One needs to be initiated and should have attained a set level of devotion to be enabled with a detailed commentary on Tirukkovayar. Though there are published works on the commentaries are all available, it is not as popular as Tiruvachakam, but both put together, we have the 8th Tirumurai. The 9th and the 11th Tirumurai are the most lesser spoken about Tirumurais in the Saiva tradition. The 9th Tirumurai, interestingly, has 9 authors, 9 different authors, whose works all get classified as 9th Tirumurai. They are all from much later period, the authors, around the 10th or the 11th century, if I can say so. And some of their history or the hagiographies aren't well documented. We only know their name, and in some cases, we know their birthplace and some services that they have done, and that's it. So a list of 9 such authors that gets classified as the 9th Tirumurai. And then you have a very popular work called the Thirumantiram by Tirumular, a grand collection of 3,000 songs addressing various topics under general philosophy and Shaiva Siddhanta in particular. So this is an extensive work, and the time period of which is under a great debate. I'm not commenting on that, but to be understood as the 10th Tirumurai, a grand collection of 3,000 verses. And then the 11th Tirumurai, as I said, by 11 different authors. And so you have post-Nayanmar period acharyas whose works are all compiled under the 11th Tirumurai. The 10th and the most grand work, a grand finale, in fact, to the collection of 12 Tirumurais. The 12th Tirumurai is what is popularly called as Periya Puranam, which is again a grand socio-religious, socio-cultural documentation of the life history of the 63 canonized devotees, or the Nayanmars. So there is an established list of 63 saints who are revered for the services that they did. They are all from various time period, from around the 4th, 5th century all the way up to the 9th century. So because the list was published around the 8th century. So most of the devotees before then have all been compiled together, and a very detailed approach to documenting their life history has been done by Shekilar, one of the most popular authors in Tamil literature in general, and for the Shaivite religious texts. His work is very unique to sing the praise of devotees and bringing them at par with God himself. So at that level, worshipping devotees and considering them as gods who actually speak is another common feature between both Shaivite and the Vaishnavite Bhakti movement that we see. All put together, there are close to 18,000 plus verses. All the 12 Tirumurais put together, close to 18,000 plus verses. On the Vaishnavite side, the collection of works are called as Divya Prabandham, or the sacred works, quite literally. And there are 4 volumes of 1,000 each. It's quite easy to remember. 1,000 as in they are all not rounded off to 1,000 exactly. 10 or 15, 20 this way, that way. But they are classified as the Mudal Ayiram, Irandam Ayiram, Moonram Ayiram, Nangam Ayiram, or the first 1,000, second, third, and the fourth 1,000s. The first 1,000 is by various authors, and it starts with Periyalvar, the foster father of Andal Nachiyar, and then has Andal's works, Kulashekar Alvar, and then you have Tirumalizai Alvar, then Tondaradi Podi Alvar, and Tiruppan Alvar. So it's a compilation of works by various different Alvars. The second set of 1,000 is a good grand work called as Periya Tirumuri, all 1,000 and odd songs authored by Tirumangai Alvar, the last and the most heroic and dramatic Alvar, in fact, in the list of 12. Religiously, he's placed at the last. He says the religious history says that he was the 12th, and with whom the Alvars, the list of Alvars kind of gets over. So his extensive pilgrimage has been documented as songs, all of which gets classified as the Periya Tirumuri, and then 2 other works of his, Kuruntantakam and Neduntantakam, all of it gets compiled under the second set of 1,000 songs. The third set is the most revered, Thiruvaimozhi, authored by Nammalvar, who is understood as the epitome of Krishna Bhakti. In fact, all the other acharyas, all the other alvars, they are understood as different parts of the divine form of Nammalvar. So the Sharira Shariri Bhavam with which they approach is Nammalvar is at the core. The Azhwars, the other Azhwars are all a part of his divine manifestation. That's how it's understood. So Nammalvar's work is exclusive, so exclusive that his works, especially Thiruvaimozhi, is never chanted during procession. If Perumal has to listen to it, he better sit conveniently, calm, and spend his time only to listen to Nammalvar. That's how special Thiruvaimozhi is. Then you have the fourth thousand, again, a collection of works by different Azhwars. You have the Mudal Azhvargal, you have Tirumalizai Azhwar's works, you have some of Nammalvar and Thirumangai Azhwar's works also, all, but they are all classified as Iyarpa, which means the meter that they have chosen to compose those songs don't sit in a specific talam meter. They cannot be rendered to a talam. While the first 3,000 can be set to ragam, if I can say so, or the pan tradition, and be actually rendered, supported by a talam scheme, the last set of 1,000, the fourth 1,000, cannot be set to tune and sung. So that's the Iyal version, the prose version. So it's called the Iyarpa. Now that's a basic introduction to the works classification. Interestingly, both the Shaivite and the Vaishnavite sacred works, all of them suddenly seem to have disappeared around the 9th, 10th century. Quite interesting that both of them face a sudden disappearance of these sacred works, and the Guru Parampara Prabhavams very clearly say that the Vaishnavite works became luptam. It kind of just went out of vogue. We don't know what happened. Similarly, in the Shaivite school also, there is a very broad belief that the works went, they just kind of vanished. Then both the schools again talk about an Acharya, one very specific, a blessed Acharya, in fact, in whose life several miracles happen, and he comes to the rescue, and both of them have their own way in which they pray, and through miracles, both the Shaivite Tirumurais and the Vaishnavite Prabandhams are brought back, compiled, put into these volumes, and it is them who are held responsible for the version as we have it today. In the Shaivite school, we have a young boy who belonged to the priest community, the Adi Shaivas, born in a small village called Tirunarayur near Chidambaram. Interestingly, the Vaishnavite equivalent called as Srimannatha Munigal is from the next village called Katamannargudi. Their villages are like just next to each other. So Nambiyandar Nambigal, as a little kid, has an intervention in his life, a divine intervention through Ganesha. Quite a coincidence that we are talking about Ganesha's intervention today. So Ganesha's intervention in his life, and this little kid is understood as a divine manifestation himself. And so popular he becomes that none but the imperial Chola king, whose name is documented as Rajaraja Abhaya Kulasekaran. Now, this name does not fit into the title of any of the historical imperial Chola kings we know since the times of Vijayalaya Chola. Rajarajan is, of course, very popular. We have the Rajaraja, we have the first, second, and the third. Abhaya Kulasekaran seems like a common title to a few, but both these put together, a king around the 10th century, seems slightly like a mismatch. But this information about Nambiyandar Nambigal and the divine intervention and all of that is first documented post 15th century, around 15th century, during the times of Umapati Sivacharya, 14th century, 14th, 15th century by Umapati Sivacharya. And there is a work which is attributed to him, the authenticity of which is still under debate by the scholars. For the religiously inclined, this is considered to be the miracle that happened around the 10th, 11th century, through whom and a very tactful king this king was. So suddenly when this the divinity of this little boy became popular, Nambiyandar Nambigal's devotion kind of got popular, the king invited himself to this little village, requested him to help him retrieve the lost works of the Nayanmars, compile them and bring them back to practice. But if we assume that this happened around the 10th century, we will have to think a little about it more deeper, because much before then, even before the 10th century, we have a handful of inscriptions that talks about rendering of Tirumurais in many established Shiva temples caused by earlier Chola kings also. I think the first one starts with Aditya I, donation or endowment that he created at Tiruppalanam temple for rendering of the Tevara Padigams. And there is one even before Aditya's time, I think at Tiruvallam near Kanchipuram. So there are several such epigraphic proof about people who were employed to chant or sing these hymns have been there even before this miracle happened. So we can, I personally, safely assume that the compilation, the compositions have been in practice, but here and there, one or two maybe, but an extensive compilation to bring them all together, divide them into volumes or bring them together into volumes and then identify them, put them in an order and bring out a publication like how we have it today, seem to have been an attempt by some king, funded, sourced, inspired by some king around the 10th century. So that if we assume that it was Rajaraja, extremely unfortunate, none of the inscriptions or copperplate records or grants issued by Rajaraja refers to this incidents. In fact, the work by Umapati Sivacharya goes on to a level where the king who caused this is celebrated as Tirumurai Kanda Cholan. We all know the number of titles that Rajaraja had, which are documented in so many inscriptions. Not one single inscription in the entire corpus of Chola inscription that we have talks about this title to any Chola king for that matter. So there seemed to have been an attempt around the 10th century is what I feel, which has been sung about with with more details around the 14th, 15th century. So I leave it at that level. So we have in tradition a divine lad called Nambiyandar Nambigal from Tirunarayur, a small village next to Chidambaram, who along with the help of the king, the imperial Chola king, on his request, attempts to go to Chidambaram, where it is believed that all these manuscripts were kept in a place and nobody knows where even the place exists. Inside the temple complex, not that there existed a room with the doors locked and the keys were with the Dikshitar. No, that's not the case. Tirumurai Kanda Puranam clearly says when they attempted and they prayed, the room all of a sudden appeared in front of them. That's what it is. So don't go by the film version. Not that there existed a room that was under lock and key. So the room just appeared out of nowhere and they attempted to go in and then they managed to retrieve the manuscripts and then they compiled it. So this is by Nambiyandar Nambigal and Rajaraja Abhaya Kulasekaran. Apart from compiling them into volumes, Nambiyandar Nambigal is believed to have gone one step ahead and requested a traditional singer who comes in the lineage of Tirunelakandathu Pananar, a Panar who excelled in playing the yard, the string instrument, very traditional string instrument, quite a challenge, who accompanied Tiruñana Sambandar in all his pilgrimage and played the yard as Jnana Sambandar composed and sang his songs. So there's this lady who comes in his lineage. So Nambiyandar Nambigal approaches her and gets her help to set all of these compositions to music also. The Panmurai as it is called. So that's the Shaivite tradition. Under the Vaishnava tradition, again, we have Srimannatha Munigal, who is associated with as Ranganatha Munigal, who is, according to historic records, put around the 10th century again to have been active, or his forefathers being active during Sundara Chola's time. And I think they were also in a way or two associated with Anbil Aniruddha Brahmarayar. So Srimannatha Munigal, who comes in a celebrated lineage of Acharyas, again, gets to hear for the first time a set of 10 songs authored by Nammalvar, and moved by the mastery of the language and the dripping devotion in it, he took it upon himself to cross several barricades, attempt several challenges, and through a divine intervention again, from Nammalvar, manages to get back all the 4,000 works, the commentaries for the 4,000 and more. Again, he is put exactly at par with Nambiyandar Nambigal to be the man behind compiling it under the 4,000 scheme and putting it in an order to start with Periyalvar, followed by Andal. So the sequence as we see it today, under the Vaishnava tradition, we owe it to them. So what seems interesting here is two individuals, both from the same region, abutting villages, again, from the same time have attempted to get this. Yeah, that's an interesting coincidence around the 10th century. And for whatever reasons, most of the Tamil works goes out of vogue all of a sudden. And then you have somebody who will have to retrieve it, be it the Sangam works, the Kavyas, and now the sacred works, all of it. So that seems to be quite an interesting coincidence to both of them from the same village to come and do this for us. Some similarities and differences between the Shaivite and the Vaishnavite literature is, under the Vaishnavite school, there are 12 Azhwars, or canonized devotees, if I can use that word for the want of a better word, I'm just using this word, the identified list of 12 great devotees. So all of them are poets whose works all goes into the Divya Prabandham, the 4,000. There are no works of, there is one work by a non-Azhwar poet, but that's for a different, I'll discuss that later. But predominantly, it is the compilation of works by all 12 of them. All of them have contributed through poems for the compilation. But here in the Shaivite school, the 63 Nayanmars list is vast, and in fact, close to 8 or 10 in the list of 63 have contributed towards poems to be compiled as the Tirumurais. So if you have to be an Azhwar, every Azhwar has also contributed or authored songs which are a part of Divya Prabandham, unlike in the Shaivite school where it is not a mandate that all 63 have sung. In fact, 8 or 10 max from the list of 63 have authored songs. And there is only one work, a later period work by an administrator of Srirangam temple called as Thiruvarangathu Amudanar, whose eulogies on Ramanuja, a collection of 108 verses on Ramanuja, much later gets added as a part of the Divya Prabandham. So that's a very, very exclusive privilege, because the supremacy with which Ramanuja is approached in Sri Vaishnava school, and as we all know, what Vaishnava school is today and the extensive popularity and the governance and the philosophical base for it, all of it are Ramanuja's contribution, undoubtedly. So a set of 108 verses singing his praises are included much later in the list of 4,000. Yeah, but for that one work, all the other titles are by Azhwars. Here in the Shaivite tradition, we have 8 or 10 from the list of 63 who have authored songs, whose songs also become a part of Tirumurai. Then we have another list of almost a dozen and a half who are non-Nayanmars, but whose works are a part of the Tirumurais. Interestingly, one Sangam literature work, Tirumuruga Trippadai, attributed to Nakirathevanar, is a part of the Padinoram Thirum, the 11th Tirumurai. So it's a part of Tirumurai. One Sangam work which gets included in the Tirumurai compilation. So the devotees and poets list, or the approach to them, kind of varies. The structuring or publishing the list of 63 Nayanmars happens around the 8th century by Sundaramurti Swamigal, again through a divine intervention. There is a beautiful work of his called as Tiruttondar Thogai, or simply the list of devotees. So wherein he publishes in a chronology the list of these 63 devotees. And so it is from him we get. The 12 Azhwars list seem to have become popular from around the 10th, 11th century. There are many poems which had caused miracles in the life of the Nayanmars. There are hardly any on the Vaishnavite side. So the Vaishnavite approach is very, very straightforward. But here, in fact, we have a set of works in the recent times being called as Arpuda Padigangal. Those padigams that caused a miracle. Unlike the Shaivite school on the padigams which cause miracles, there are hardly any in the Vaishnavite side. That's an interesting difference too. A couple of concepts that are common in both the Shaivite and the Vaishnavite tradition. The first, to begin with, the Vaishnavite's approach to sing Perumal is merely to praise him to live long. It's in fact called by a very, very technical term as Mangala Sasanam, which means, may you live long. That's a straightforward approach. Irrespective of what is the subject that they are singing, any verse by an Azhwar always attempts or aims at praising Perumal. So without any challenges, he lives long. The Vaishnavite's devotion to Perumal is mostly like a caring mother. Of course, they take Nayika Bhavam, all that is there. But the approach to understand in a simple context is that of a mother to take care of Perumal with that motherly attachment. So any verse that they sing becomes a Mangala Sasanam, which is merely to praise and pray that he lives long. So the first opening work in the Divya Prabandham compilation is by Periyalvar called as Thiruppallandu, which is quite literally praising Perumal to live well and good for hundreds and hundreds of years to come. The English translations for the Divya Prabandhams are by Sri Srirama Bharati, who has beautifully translated the 4,000 verses into very apt choice of words and meter and all that set in his translation work. And the Tirumurai translations are from Sri Gopal Iyer, Sri Shankar Narayanan, of course from Sri Shekhar Adipudi, Sri T.N. Ramachandran sir, and many others. Many thanks to them. I've picked up these translations from open sources in the internet. So, the Pallandu approach. Many of us assume that there is no Pallandu approach or a reference to Pallandu in Shaivite literature, but there is a very unique reference to devotees who sing Pallandu at Tiruvarur in one of the works of Appar. He says, Paduvar, Panivar, Pallandisai Kuru Pattargal. And the translation is very interesting. He says, pious people who sing your praise, pay homage and sing benedictory verses wishing you longevity. Quite literally, Pallandu is to live long. So there is a very unique reference to a bunch of devotees, singers, who sing Pallandu to Shiva also. Then you have the concept of Tirupalli Ezhuchi, which is an ancient tradition, grammar for which is framed by Tolgapiyar himself, about identifying people who are worthy enough to be sung, to be woken up. Yeah, so you have the deputed or appointed singers who will sing at the doorstep probably of the bedchamber to wake the king up. And that tradition is also for the gods. So we have Manikavachakar, who sings a set of 11 such songs describing the dawn and the birds chirping and people all gathering around the temple, and the first ray of sun is out. So please wake up. So a beautiful set of songs on Tirupalli Ezhuchi addressed to the god of Avudayar Kovil or Tirupperunturai, that shrine near Pudukkottai, which is very, very closely associated with Manikavachakar. Equivalent to Manikavachakar's Tirupalli Ezhuchi, we have the Song of Dawn or a Suprabhatam rendered by Tondaradipudiyalvar on Srirangam. He's attempting to wake the Lord of Srirangam, where he says the sun is out and his first ray has reached to the temple doors to pray to you. And we have the kings, we have all the other celestials, we have the Digbalakas. They are all waiting here. And so please wake up to bless us. So that's an equivalent attempt again by Tondaradipudiyalvar. We can safely assume that this becomes an influence or an inspiration to sing Suprabhatams much later, including the most popular Venkateshwara Suprabhatam sung at Tirumala every day. So the set of 11 songs as Tirupalli Ezhuchi. This is again common in both the schools. Then you have the Pavai Nonbu, which is an ancient Tamil tradition where young girls they perform a vratam or an ove to get a good match for a happy married life. So the young unmarried girls perform this vratam coinciding between the Margazhi and the Thai months, which is mid-December to mid-January. So those 30 days are exclusively reserved for observing this particular vow, and that becomes a popular theme for both Manikavachakar and Andal to compose a set of songs, 20 by Manikavachakar and 30 by Andal, describing the vratam that they observe. So Manikavachakar aims at attaining the lotus feet of Shiva through Shakti, and Andal, quite open in her approach, she says, I want to be born. I mean, if at all I'm going to be born again, may I be born to serve you. The only benefit that I seek from you is to keep serving you. So these two concepts again are common. The Tirupavai, the very popular Tirupavai, and the Tiruvambavai by Andal and Manikavachakar. Jnana Sambandhar undoubtedly is a milestone in Tamil literature history. There are a few people who believe that Sangam literature, if we consider that as a starting point, the next break even is around it's Jnana Sambandhar and his works. So that the entire phase in between is all common. Jnana Sambandhar was a milestone, and he has done extensive pilgrimages and he has documented his visits. Several miracles have happened through his prayers in many shrines, including bringing back to life Poombavai at Mylapore and the set of 11 songs describing the festivals and all that. So his approach to composing songs were very, very straightforward, describing the greatness of Shiva through Puranas and Itihasas, describing his physical appearance, and describing the place that which he is visiting, the flora and fauna, the people, the topography, the town that it is, the wealth of the people, and the buildings around, water bodies, whatnot. So this is how his compositions are mostly themed. Majority of his works are on pilgrimages again. Interestingly, very recent discovery of two of his compositions in the start of the last century, early 20th century, one from a set of manuscripts and another from a temple inscription, in fact, has helped us earn two more padigams of Jnana Sambandha included in the print of Tirumurais from the 20th century. So that's a very, very interesting, invention, if I can say, or discovery, if I can say so, in the last century for the Shaivite literature. So two of his works, one dedicated to Kiliyannavur or Kiliyanur near Pondicherry, and one more for a temple called Thiruvidaivai near Kumbakonam. Both these temples didn't have a padigam. We don't know from when on, but at least till 20th century, early 20th century, we didn't have a padigam for these two temples. Only through a long lost set of manuscripts and one from the temple inscriptions directly, we managed to get these two padigams. Unfortunately, the temple inscriptions were chipped off 3 years after the discovery. Thankfully, the Mysore, the bank there has managed to get estampishous copies and read and published these padigams. So we have these two padigams introduced very recently. His prowess is unmatched. Many of the meters, style of singing and all that Jnana Sambandha used has not been touched upon after him. We can just say that. Of all the lakhs and lakhs of poets that the world had seen between 6th Tamil literature had seen from the 6th, 7th to the 21st century, none of them have attempted some of the meters or way of singing or conceptual singing that Jnana Sambandha ever approached. I'm just, the screen has one such padigam, two songs from one such padigam dedicated to his own birth town, which is Shirgadi near Chidambaram. And this style of authoring is called as Ekapadam, where the same line gets repeated 4 times for that verse to frame that one verse. It's the same line that gets repeated. Then is the task to give a different meaning for the usage of the same words in different lines. For example, the opening verse of this set is Biramaburatturai Pemman Yemman. Biramaburatturai Pemman Yemman. Biramaburatturai Pemman Yemman. Biramaburatturai Pemman Yemman. Very easy to by heart and chant. But when it comes to understanding the meaning, the same set of words in different lines means different. Yeah, that will have a lot of philosophy going into it, wordplay and all that to understand. So a set of 12 such compositions. I think after him, if I'm right, Vannacharabam Dandapani Swamigal has made an attempt to come up with something like this, but not sure if that's the case. But Ekapadam is very unique. We have close to 12 or 13 such styles that Jnana Sambandha has followed. For example, Mori Matru, where the first half of the first line, second half of the second line will match. And only then it will make a meaning. Otherwise, it looks meaningless, in fact. And the second half of the first line and the first half of the second line goes together to give you the meaning. So such wordplay and positioning it, and of course, the most popular palindrome that he has done. Ya mama ni ya mama, yari kama kanaka, kana kama kari ya mama ya ni mama ya. Left to right, right to left, either ways, you get the same verse. 11 such words with very deep meaning and his own style of including philosophy in it. So unmatched poet that the Tamil world has seen so far when it comes to traditional composition set to specific meters and more. There is a standard format, quite interestingly, that he follows in every padigam of his. The 8th song, invariably, in all of the hundreds of padigams that he had sung, will be dedicated to Ravana Garvabhangam. About Ravana managing to shake the Kailasha and how Shiva taught him a lesson. So the Ravana Garvabhangam invariably is the subject for the 8th song. The 9th song invariably will be Lingodbhava Purana, about Brahma and Vishnu managing to find the origin and the crown of Shiva and how they lost. And so Lingodbhava Purana will always be the concept for the 9th song. The 10th song invariably again will be warning us against the Avaidika schools, Buddhist, various different schools of Buddhist religion and the Jainas, Shramanas, if you can say so, warning them of the kind of theology that it is, the theory that it is, or their practices which are Avaidic and sometimes even unhygienic. He gets very specific to describe their traditions, their belief systems, to pinpoint the mistakes that they do in their daily practice and way of life and all that. So the 8th, 9th, and 10th song is standardized to get you these themes. Tirunavukarasar, on the other hand, is extremely heavy and very, very moving poems that he had sung. Nayika Bhavam is not understood as Nayika Bhavam, but assuming the identity of a heroine, somebody who has fallen in love with Shiva, and composing a male voice but echoing a feminine tone in its content is quite popular by Tirunavukarasar. The others have also sung, but Tirunavukarasar's is very popular. I think majority of the temples that we have as Padal Petra Sthalam today have been sung by him. And the 10th song will always be Ravana Garbhabhangam. Again, so that's a standard format. And he restricts his works, the Padigams, to 10 songs, 10 verses. I don't think there are any Padigams where he discloses his name or finds or describes a benefit or a Palashruti for that particular set of 10 songs. So that's unique again in his work. The 5th Tirumurai is called as Tirukkuruntogai, very short verses. And then the 6th is called as Tiruthandagam. In fact, Upper is popular for the Thandagam compositions that he did. In fact, he's called as Thandaka Chadurar, someone with a chaturyam to compose Thandagams, which are really long-running verses. So these are some special aspects. Sundaramurti Swamigal is the last in the list of 3, had sung 100 Padigams with 10 or 11 songs each. His relationship with Tiruvarur is very dramatic, quite important. And during his time, Tiruvarur seemed to have been the capital of Shaiva school. Interestingly, unlike his predecessors, Jnanasambandar and Appar, he has not gone around condemning other religions popularly. We don't see that as a major theme in his works. Probably we can assume that around the 8th, 9th century, during his time, 8th century, because of the work of Appar and Sambandar and several political changes that happened because of them, influenced or inspired by them, the challenges that the traditional Shaivites and Vaishnavites faced here should have gone down big time. So it was very convenient for him to go around singing Shiva's temples, and that seemed to be his approach. Requesting for wealth and money and gifts and gold from Shiva is a popular theme in his works. That was because he was fond of serving Shiva devotees. In fact, traditionally, it's believed that the reason for his birth is to sing the praise of, one of the reasons is to sing the praise of devotees. So he goes around collecting money from Shiva, requesting money from and support from Shiva to feed Shiva devotees extensively. That's something unique that we see in his work. And a milestone work of his is the Tirutondar Togai, or listing out the names of the 63 Nayanmars. Thanks to him, we have a done and sealed list of 63. Because today it's quite popular to go around calling anybody and everybody as the 64th Nayanmar. Unfortunately, thankfully, he has sealed it with the list of 63, and there it stops. So a work with 11 verses exclusively for that. The 4th in list is Manikavachakar, whose time period is a never-ending debate in the world of Tamil literature. But I think predominantly all scholars accept his time to be around the 9th century. And his work is, of course, Tiruvachakam. He was the minister of the Pandyas, and how he was initiated, brought to the Shaivite fold, and all that is quite popular. That's very dramatic. In fact, he's brought to the fold. Several miracles happen. Finally, he retires from being the minister, a chief advisor to the Pandya, and goes on a pilgrimage, visits many temple towns, sings the philosophy at depth, and finally goes to Chidambaram, where Nataraja comes to assist him as his scribe to document all the compositions into manuscripts, and finally attains salvation at Chidambaram. One unique aspect of his works, Tiruvachakam, is he has attempted many genres that gets classified as Sitrilakyam. A list of 96 such styles or genres of singing are called as Sitrilakyam, which has been attempted predominantly by Manikavachakar. We have Tiruthallenam, we have Ammanai, we have Pandadal, and we have Pookkoidal and Kuyil Pattu, sending birds as messengers. So these are separate styles or themes under which you can compose. Each theme will have its own said grammar to be followed. So that is not seen predominantly in the works of others. Here and there, yes, but setting that as a theme to compose a set of 11 or 12 songs by Manikavachakar gives us another clue to the time period to which he was active. And Tirukkovayar, I think I've described about it already, a deep down Agam genre. The 9th, 10th, and 11th Tirumurai, as I said, 9th and 11th works composed by many different acharyas. Interestingly, 11th Tirumurai has several works in praise of Jnanasambandar himself and one in praise of Appar. You have Kapilar, you have Paranar, and they are identified with the Sangam period, Kapilar, Paranar, and Nakirar, and their works are also a part of the 11th Tirumurai. And Tirumantram, the 10th Tirumurai, is a deep philosophical reference book. In fact, it is a brilliant attempt in translating the otherwise voluminous knowledge that are echoed through the Saiva Agamas, quintessence of which is translated and given to us in a language that we easily understand. Especially the philosophy part described in the Saiva Agamas are dealt with. There are the rituals also that are described, but not as literal translation, but the quintessence of it, the knowledge content of it is translated and given to us as Tirumantram. The 12th work is by Shekila, a minister under Kulothunga II, and he was in fact ordained by the king to compose the hagiographies, the life history of all the Nayanmars. In fact, this I would say is probably the earliest attempt to compile a historic work. It is very historic in approach. I'm not sure as to where all he had his data collected, what were the sources for him, because some of the Nayanmars who lived like 600, 700 centuries before him, and the depth to which he has described their sociological backgrounds, the towns as they looked when these Nayanmars were active. Yeah, I mean, bringing them all to form it into a Mahakavyam. That's exactly why, it is, apart from the Shaivites, you also have people inclined towards the language celebrating it. It is a Mahakavya, undoubtedly. We really need to get ourselves introduced at least to the content and the framing of Periya Puranam to appreciate it better. For the sake of time, I would just say it's an extensive compilation of the life history of the Nayanmars, and be informed, some of them are contemporaries, but he just follows the chronology of Sundarar. So when the list of Nayanmars as Sundarar gave out in his Tirutondar Togai is the same way that he follows. So with all these constraints, to build a work like this is simply amazing. To the Vaishnavite tradition of assumed identity, this is very popular theme that you see. Many Azhwars assuming themselves as Yashodha and Gopika. These are two popular characters with which they identified. And there are not so popular characters like Devaki, Dasharatha, and even Hanuman. So it's like accepting that identity, assuming that identity, and singing in that voice. So this one song is from Kulashekara Azhwar, where he assumes himself to be Devaki. After comes a Samharam, when Krishna comes to meet Devaki and Vasudeva at the jail, the prison, apparently Devaki laments out, what sin did I commit? I've been hearing so much about all your cheshtitams, the pranks that you did, and the best times that the people of Gokulam had. What was it that me and Vasudeva did? What sin did we have that we missed all of it? So, Mundai Nanmurai Anbudai Mahalir, Murai Tantam Urangida Irutti, Yendaye Yendan Kulapperum Shudare, Yedumuhil Kanathil Kavarere, Undai Yavan Yenduraipa, Ninchengel Viralinum Kadai Kanninum. She says when the Gopikas managed to get turns to hold you and to celebrate you, to play with you, one of them playfully asked, "Who is your dad in this crowd?" Yeah, like how we ask our own kids at home, "Appa yaranu kaattu." And mari ketirukanga. And so she says like, Nandagopa was so blessed that you pointed to him as your father. Nandan Petranan, Nalvinayilla Nangalkon Vasudevan Petrilane. What did we sin that Vasudeva didn't get it and Nandagopa got it? A set of 11 songs in this tone. And he calls it as Daiva Tevagi Pulambiya Pulambal. He in fact gives it a title, Daiva Tevagi Pulambiya Pulambal. Then you have Dasharathan Pulambiya Pulambal, where Dasharatha, after having ordered Rama to go to the forest and his lament. So he's like, after causing all of this trouble to you, and now that you have left the kingdom and you're there, and you are already on your journey, how come I'm still alive? Yeah, I should have had a massive cardiac arrest. My heart should have bursted by now, but how on earth am I still even alive? So these are very unique identities that only Kulashekara Azhwar has taken on himself to bring out the emotions of two very closely associated characters with Rama and Krishna Avatara, but those who felt that they were cursed to witness things that happened during their time. One is Devaki and the other is Dasharatha. Dasharathan Pulambiya Pulambal, Devaki Pulambiya Pulambal. So, in fact, Alvar titles these two works. Very interestingly, Periyalvar identifies himself with Hanuman, paints a picture of Ashokavana, Sita is seated, and Hanuman has just gone there as a messenger, he's attempting to hand over the message, but Sita, not knowing Hanuman, thinks probably this is also a prank by Ravana. And that is when Hanuman takes it upon himself to describe some scenes back in the past, which were very intimate only to Rama and Sita. And if anybody, Rama should have only informed Hanuman. Such scenes are listed one after the other, and he helps Sita understand that he is, yes, actually a messenger. Manamarum Melnoki Vaidevi Vinnappam. I have a request. Kanamarum Kalladar Poi Kaduraita Kalathu, Tenamarum Podicharal, Chitira Kudatirpa, Palmuriyai, Baradanambi, Panittadumor Adayalam. Every verse ends with Uru Adayalam. He gives out a proof. He says, when you were at Chitrakutam, Bharata came to seek apology. He prayed to you. He spoke all such sweet words, and that is a proof by itself. Not many know about it. Hey, Devi, I know it. Please accept me as a messenger. And so that's a very unique characteristic again. So likewise, he has a set of 10 songs. Periyalvar has attempted assuming himself as Hanuman. So he says, Vararum Mulaimadavaal Vaidevi Tanai Kandu, Sirarum Tiral Anuman Terinduraitha Adayalam. He says, I have assumed the identity of Hanuman and listed these 10 proofs that probably Hanuman told Sita. So the Azhwars and the Nayanmars undoubtedly had in-depth knowledge about the scriptures, the Puranas and Itihasas. There isn't any way or occasion where they have gone against a version that is seen in the Puranas or the Itihasas. So they've had first-hand information about these works. Above all, when it comes to Nayika Bhavam, they took 3 different forms. I mean, assuming the role of a woman, the Nayika Bhavam is directly to assume themselves as the heroine. Then you have the role of the heroine's mother, or in some rare occasions, the friends of the heroine, the lady love. So these 3 characters are again assumed, and the voice of these characters come out. For example, Nammalvar in his Thiruvaimozhi assumes the role of a mother, worried about the state of his daughter who had fallen in love and exhibiting all sorts of weird emotions. He says, like, is there a soothsayer who can intervene now to check up on my daughter, attend to her, and help us understand what is causing all the trouble? Tirpare Yamini Yengadam Nadudum. Is there anybody who can sort this out for us? Where exactly can I go? So this concept of Kuravanji, where the Alvar assumes the role of a heroine, falls in love and behaves very weird, and there is a mother who's worried about this sudden change, and then there is a conversation between the heroine's mother, heroine, the triangle is there, the friends, the mom, and the lady in love. So this is another common theme that they follow too. And then you have Nammalvar, who again takes the role of the friends there. Yeah, so this is in a place called Tolaivilli Mangalam near Alvar Tirunagari, his birthplace, where the festival is happening. Nammalvar's mom and her friends have gone there to attend the festival. After having visited the temple and the town, Nammalvar was so adamant that please don't take me out of here. Leave me here, I want to live here for my Lord. Mother is worried, and so she's pulling her out of Tolaivilli Mangalam, but Alvar is so adamant. And there Alvar uses this very beautiful phrase, Marangalum Irangum Vagai. We generally associate trees to be emotionless. But here, seeing her cry out her love, even the trees melted. So these are very beautiful comparisons and metaphors and similes that they have used to bring out the depth and the intensity of love. Another interesting common genre in both Saiva and Vaishnava tradition is to send messengers to the Lord to carry information. You have the clouds, you have the birds, flowers, honeybee. All of these are popular messengers. This is a tradition that continues from the Sangam period. So we have Andal, who sends the clouds from the Western Ghats from her place of birth, which is Srivilliputturu in the south of Tamil Nadu, all the way up to Thiruvenkadam, to the north of Tamil Nadu, and thought that the clouds are the best messengers because they are anyways going to go and ram on the mountain top. And so it's easy for them to communicate her love. Then 2 unique themes, I'll just describe that and kind of conclude it. We have one by Andal, where she observes a vratam again. exclusively to Manmada. In the entire 2000 plus years of Tamil literature, by so many poets and all of them, this is the only occasion where a very, very Vedic ritual to propitiate Manmada to help you get your match, or to help you get married to this one gentleman whom you love. This is the only occasion where a theme of that sort has been sung. I've been told that one or two such occasions are described in Sanskrit literature, but in Tamil, Andal is the only one who has described this very, very Vedic ritual to propitiate Kama, Manmada, to help her get married to Krishna. And it is a very beautiful ritual. In fact, she talks about drawing columns, mandalams, thoranam. The image of Kama is invoked in a painting done on the wall, and then the offerings are described, the samit, the fire offerings. Oh, it is a proper Vedic ritual that she takes. Two genres again sung only by Thirumangai Azhwar, and the entire corpus of Tamil literature so far is assuming the role of the Rakshasas who were arrested after Rama Ravana Yuddham. Apparently, the Vanara Sainyam wanted to relax after a long war and humiliated the Rakshasas to perform a very witty, funny dance in front of them to entertain them after the war. Yeah, so Azhwar assumes the role of those Rakshasas, in fact, and says, we will swell our tongue by chanting the name of Rama. Please don't humiliate us. Please don't bother us. So this is a very, very unique genre called as Kuzhamani Thuram and Pongattam Pongo, which again, in the entire corpus of Tamil literature, only Thirumangai Azhwar uses in these two verses. A very, very unique literature. And in Vaishnava tradition, Nammalvar and Ramanuja are two acharyas whose praises as songs are a part of Divya Prabandha. In the Saiva tradition, of course, I was just telling you about how works on Thiruñana Sambandar and Appar Swamigal are all a part of the 11th Tirumurai. Here we have a set of 11 verses called as Kanninun Chiruttambu by the prime disciple of Nammalvar, Madhura Kavigal, which is also a part of the Nalayar Divya Prabandham. And Amudanar's work on Ramanuja Nutrandadi is a part. So in the Vaishnava tradition, philosophically also, Nammalvar and Ramanuja are put at par with Perumal, and it is believed they can independently grant you liberation. Their power to grant liberation is put at par with Krishna himself. That's how special these two Azhwars are. The entire topography of Tamil Nadu's sacred towns, thanks to the Azhwars and the Nayanmars, the Vaishnavites have 108 Divya Desams spread across India, predominantly Tamil Nadu and Kerala. Very few outside, I think 10 or 11 outside Tamil Nadu, 13 in Kerala, and the rest of them are in Tamil Nadu. The Shaivites have 276 such shrines all across, majority again, 80-90% of it in Tamil Nadu, one in Kerala, one in Karnataka, Kalahasti and Srisailam in Andhra, Kedarnath, Kailasham, Anekatankavatam, and some shrines in the north of India, 2 in Sri Lanka. The Sri Lanka connect for the Shaivites seem to have been as old as the Nayanmars times. The Azhwars, for some reasons, have restricted it within India, cross ocean, and that doesn't seem to have been a tradition. And so their contribution, their pilgrimages are restricted to India. But 2 shrines in Sri Lanka by Thiruñana Sambandar and Sundara seems to have been a very, very new approach by themselves. The Shaivites also have the tradition of identifying group of temples called as Vaipu Talangal, because for the Vaishnavite school, if there is even a single mention in one poem about one particular temple town, it's enough to be classified as a Divya Desams. But for the Shaivites, the temple town should have earned a Padigam, a set of 10 songs, full 10 songs, to be classified as a Padal Petrasthalam. So you have 276 Padal Petrasthalams, but limitless Vaipu Talangal. Random temples, some of which we are not even sure where they are. So many temples are mentioned here and there, but only that gets a set of 10 songs gets classified as a Padal Petrasthalam. Their take on other religions, as I told you, Jnana Sambandar and Appar, both of them have had very, very strong opinions on the non-Vedic religions, especially the Buddhist and the Jains, and the other schools of Buddhism like Theravada and others. Similarly, we have Tirumalizai Azhwar, Nammalvar to an extent, and Thondaradi Podi Azhwar and others who've again echoed the same voice. So these are undoubtedly Vedas as the foundation. These two religions have come up with Vedas as the foundation. So any school of thought which criticizes the Vedas or tries to mock it will obviously be faced with wrath by the Vedic school. So here you have many of these Nayanmars and Azhwars opposing the Buddhists and their philosophies in their works. Historical value, many kings, wars, dynasties have all been mentioned. The flags, emblems by them, all of these are mentioned. On communities, the Varnas, Ashrama, all of this are mentioned. Vedic scholars, the Tevaradiyars who performed dance, temple system, other communities that were active, festivals that were celebrated, all of these are documented. So for 500 odd years, whatever was happening in Tamil Nadu is echoed by the sacred works. Rivers and water bodies, even seas, beaches, coastline, they are all described. Each temple has its own flora and fauna that is being described at length. The landscape, how tedious or how tough the landscape is, whether it is inflicted by hunters or such dangerous things. All of this are again described in the works. Very well laid out cities, streets, broad roads where chariots keep frequenting, the residential buildings with balconies, G+1 structures, all of these are again described. Mostly the early Azhwars and the Nayanmars have followed Venba and Andadi format. Then you have Kattali Kalithurai, which is an equally phased length or meter. There are Viruttams, there are Asiriyappa. These are different meters. I'm not going into the detail. Chitra Kavi, where what you see in the picture, Rathabandham are all authored. Muddle as a separate genre. I think the shortest verse are what are called as Kanni. Just 2 lines, as you see. Kannan Kadalinai Nannum Manamudagir Yennum Tirunamam Tinnam Naraname. The longest are with 8 seer as Kaliviruttam. So these are the 2 set to samples for the shortest and the longest meters. Commentaries in the Vaishnavite literature is a rich corpus again. You have the Vaishnavite Acharyas, namely Periyavachan Pillai and Nampillai and others, who have extensively commented on the works of the Azhwars. There has been an attempt, even during the times of Shekhilar, to author commentaries on the works of the Thevaram authors, but it didn't get into a proper format or as structured as the Vaishnavites. Here, the attempts happen popularly after the 1800s. So the Shaivite literature and commentaries are something that still goes on. The Shaivite tradition has given way to an ancient school of Tamil music called as the Oduvar tradition. There are references to music, musical instruments, pun, and more. They are called as Vinnappam Seivargal. The musical equivalent of the Oduvar tradition can be called as the Arayar Sevai tradition under the Vaishnavite school. In religious activities, till date, in both the schools, Shaivite and the Vaishnavite, no religious activities at temples or religious institutions or even at a residence level is complete without chanting these works. For a religiously inclined, there cannot be a religious activity without these works. You have exclusive festivals where these works are alone celebrated. The timeline is something that is common between the 5th to the 9th century, and the format or the meter followed during the same phase between the Shaivite and the Vaishnavite poets, interestingly, are again similar. The content are again, there are a lot of similarities. Philosophy being spoken out through poetry is again common between them. The complete topography of temple towns, sacred landscape of Tamil Nadu, we owe it only to the Azhwars and the Nayanmars. Not the Puranas, not the Sthala Puranas, Upapuranas, all of that only adds value to the fact that they have been visited by the Azhwars and Nayanmars. And in fact, the imperial Cholas, popular for all the thousands of temples that they built, were particular about developing temples visited and sung by the Nayanmars and Azhwars. So thanks to the Azhwars and Nayanmars, Tamil Nadu is a land of so many temples. 10th century, something important has happened, because that is when both the school kind of institutionalizes these works and brings it into a particular format. And that is exactly when they become an integral part of temple protocol. They have been rendered in the temples even before that, but becoming an integral part happens around the 10th century. The largest corpus of literature in Tamil literature with a common genre is undoubtedly the Bhakti literature. It is again undoubtedly a continuation of Vedic traditions, Puranas and Itihasas, but more so temple-centric. Praying and praising the Lord are the key concepts that you see in most of the songs. This is the period when the philosophy of both Ramanuja school and the Azhwars, the Visishtadvaita and the Shaiva Siddhanta tradition starts gaining importance, and the philosophy are brought out through these verses, and a clear picture of the society, people, and nature. Unfortunately, those are the times when we don't get inscriptions as frequent as post 10th century. So if there is one more tool to understand history, thankfully we have the Bhakti literature, which talks a lot about common people, the landscape, festivals, practices, castes, community, denominations, role of different people in temples, and a wide range of socio-history is again covered by these divine verses. Historical values, as I said, associating the kings, wars, dynasties, all of that again finds mention here. The Bhakti period, the first phase of the Bhakti period between the 5th and the 9th century has paved way to later period works and philosophical works, commentaries by the Vaishnavite Acharyas on the Divya Prabandham and all that, and continues to inspire people in a very great way towards Bhakti as a common field. I think the last phase I had to double up my speed. My sincere apologies, had to keep within time, the 1 hour and 15-minute slot. I think I'm late by 5 minutes already. Thank you for the opportunity. And Murthy Ellam Vadi, Engal Mono Guru Vadi, Arul Varte Yendrum Vadi, Anbar Vadi Parabarame. Ellam Shri Tyagaraja Kripai, Shri Tyagaraja Maharajo Vijayate, Arura Tyagesa. Thank you.
Thank you. Madhu, we can have a brief conversation. We can talk for at least the next 10 to 15 minutes max.
Sure.
If you can close the presentation.
Yeah.
There are some questions, but I think we can actually have a generic discussion. I'll also bring in the questions as we go along. What you have covered is, quite a lot. Thank you for a wonderful talk. Particularly, not just a sort of overview of the cast, characters, what they did, how they did, etc., but also the comparison between the Shaivite and the Vaishnavite texts and what has been covered in each one of them. And the comparisons particularly was really interesting. Unfortunately, though, the last few lines you mentioned, we have to stop at around 9th century. And beyond that comes the commentary era when Vaishnavism goes in a certain direction, which is not something that we see in the Saivism. And also, the other thing that we have to look at is Sanskritizing these works. The emergence of Sanskrit works, which are inspired clearly by the Tamil works, which is sort of an attempt to take these, what is predominantly local in Tamil Nadu, the Tamil country, to be taken first to south of India and then to a wider, India as a whole. In both Vaishnavism and Shaivism, we see that traveling. Maybe, it's a topic for another day.
Separate discussion. Yeah.
Certainly that we have to see what is the impact of the Nayanmars on the Veerashaiva literature. We have to really talk about the Sanskritic translation of Periya Puranam as Upamanyu Bhakta Vilasam and Agastya Bhakta Vilasam, and how that in turn impacts the whole country in a sense of the saints of the extreme saints of Saivite saints of Tamil Nadu. So all these are worthy of discussion. There are views that the Divya Prabandham sort of inspired Bhagavatam, which I will not really comment on that, but there are scholars talking about that. But fascinating. I think really this is a sort of very good primer for people who don't know Tamil, who are following our monthly talks, to seriously look at this core literature. There's one other aspect again, I'm only looking at what has not been taught. The temple building happened right through in parallel, right? And the saints were going to temples and then singing. That much we know. Which temple, what version of it, whether they were rebuilt, it's very clear that many of them were rebuilt, because we know that happened. And their impact, which, for example, only one point I will mention and then I will ask you some questions. Nagaswamy gave a fantastic talk for us where he talked about Sundaramurthy Nayanar singing about various places, particularly say Chidambaram, which gets enshrined in the paintings of Brihadishwara temple, which is in turn most likely would have been seen by Sekidar, who in turn builds his literature.
Narrative.
Right? The way the juxtaposition of all these things, literature to
Painting.
a physical, painting in a temple, which is seen then again giving birth to a literature.
New literature.
Right? I'm sure many other examples we can look at, historically how Thirumangai specifically talks about Paramechura Vindagaram of Kanchipuram, Vaikuntha Perumal, which
Ashtapoyakaram and several temples that he mentions.
Several temples.
The kings and even the titles, Vairamayakan and other titles.
Which you did talk about. Like so much of history we can build from the fragments that, so that is not the purpose of these saints. You do pick up plenty of history from their work.
True.
Right? So absolutely fascinating. And now the question, what was there here in the Tamil country which triggered something like this? It's absolutely new, not there anywhere in India. This vernacularization is not just a simple copy, but a totally new form. What could have been the reason for this to emerge in Tamil Nadu?
See, I personally feel the 3rd and the 4th century seems to be slightly, gray for a detailed analysis about the historical events during that phase. That's when we have the last phase of the Sangam period, popularly understood as the last phase. That needs a separate discussion, but yeah, let's assume that it was the last phase. And of course, we have the very curious topic on Kalabirars again, with that overlaps right there. In fact, 2 Nayanmars life history has references to the Kalabirars directly. And so, that's when several social and political changes were happening, no doubt about it. In fact, I was telling about the coming to power of the merchant class, like how Silapadikaram comes and, the Karikal Ammayar becoming the first one to sing about and she belonging to the traditional community of merchants. So several such socio-political changes were happening. See, there is a general opinion that Jainism and Buddhism was very popular here during Sangam phase as such. I'd like to differ in that because hardly anything about Buddhist traditions we see here. And the contribution of poets who were Jains happens during the Padanankal Kanakku and the Mel Kanakku works that were happening, while predominantly the poets and the subject of discussion under the Sangam phase was very Vedic, if I can say so, or broadly all that falls under Vedic tradition, if I can, for the want of your word. Yeah, so the intervention of these two religions should have happened sometime around the 3rd, 4th century, slowly usurping power. And in the next 3 centuries, they were powerful enough to command the Pandya throne, so much so that the queen was worried about the changing demography and requested Jnanasambandar to come all the way from there. And in fact, that is the major contribution of Jnanasambandar. In fact, Sekidar, when he compiles the life history of Jnanasambandar, I think 50% of it is about Jnanasambandar's visit to Madurai and the challenges that he had to face there and whatever happened after that. Yeah, so I think the 3rd and the 4th century is when these changes should have slowly come into picture. Spearheaded definitely by religious changes, which would have definitely had an impact on social and political aspects. Yeah, that's exactly why I think we don't have much of an idea about what happened then. And the life history of Murthy Nayanar, wherein Sekidar clearly talks about an invasion by the Karnatakar, aka Kalapirars, and how the Pandya throne kind of comes to a close and how Murthy Nayanar was selected by the temple elephant and then how he gets to rule. So that one Puranam to me is very particularly important at a historical level because Sekidar is not a random storyteller to me.
Right.
He has compiled extensive details. He paints brilliant canvases as opposed to the life history of the Nayanmars, the background, the social class to which they belonged and their activities, their belief and all that. So when he talks about an invasion from the Karnataka region to Madurai and the Pandya throne coming to a close and how the elephant has to be employed to identify the next in place and how Murti Nayanar emerges, that place, and of course the Pandya copper plates that talks about the Kali, Kalapirar and all that. I think 3rd, 4th century is when these two religions especially should have started dominating the social fabric. And that definitely would have paved way for a movement, if we can say so, by the Azhwars and the Nayanmars. Because it starts around the 4th century. Yeah, around the same century. So I personally opine it at that level.
Okay. At a much later time period, we see there is post 9th century in terms of compilation, particularly of both Nadamuni and Nambiyandar Nambi. We see that there is an urge again. In a sense, the how shall I put it? The Renaissance has already happened. The 6th to 9th, at the ground level, it has already happened.
Yeah,
that's what we see as a success of these.
The same poets.
63 plus 12, or at least 10 plus 12, whatever it is, has already happened. But there is a further resurgence. There is a desperation where there is probably a fear that maybe they are going to collapse or vanish because you have now no competition. I think the kings want to re-establish. It's almost like the Sangam poets or the post-Sangam kings wanting to anthologize, because you are, it may just vanish. There is this severe urge to commission Nadamuni and whatever the Guru Parampara Prabhavam or the stories say, is a clear attempt by the rulers to go and collect everything, organize, and then give it a certain sanctity. And then the bringing of that into the temple ritual itself. So there is first, these are very clearly outside the temple. They are amongst people. Then they are organized. Then they are canonized, if you want to use that word, and established inside the temple. Now you cannot take them out because it is part of your temple ritual. So that's beautiful in the sense that they are so perfectly parallel. It's not one first and the second, the two religions, they're so perfectly parallel.
In fact, the Vaishnavite Guru Parampara emphasizes that Nathamunigal ordered that the Divya Prabandhams are chanted, a tabulation of Divya Prabandhams to be chanted at your residential level also. All important rituals, a wedding ceremony or a funeral, whatever it is, selected verses were already made a part of it, and they actually say that Nathamunigal emphasized on chanting those specific verses, and the tabulation actually happens. To say in the morning times, Tirupallandu, Tirupalliyachi, Tirupavai. And then on these days, this. So associating one birth star with the Azhwar and making sure that his verses are chanted that day. So on specific days, these verses. So this seems to be, I think I would blame the Cholas for this. Praise the Cholas for this. Because interestingly, both on the Shaivite and the Vaishnavite Divya Desams and the Padal Petra Stalams, almost 50% of it is in Chola country. The Divya Desams and Padal Petra Stalams are classified regionally. You have the Cholas, the Pandyas, the Edanadu, the Nadunadu, Tontenadu. It is very regional. Very regional. So 40 of the 108, almost 50% is in the Chola country. Similarly here, I think out of the 276, close to 170 or a little more than that is again in the Chola country. Yeah, 2/3, almost. So that way, I think the Cholas also made sure that the temples become the center of power. It has been in existence, no doubt about it, but they kind of streamlined it better. Many communities being made a part, recognized for their service. Yeah, in fact, the Prasadam distribution scheme, wherein all the food offerings made, there is always a scheme which talks about what portion of it goes to whom. Starting from the chief priest to the assistants, to the cooks, to the level even the Desandris, to the travelers, finally. Yeah, random travelers who have come to the temple, 2 portions of the prasadam will be reserved for him or her. So I think institutionalizing temples in a very, very schematic format by the Cholas and making sure that 2 such acharyas, both from the Chola country again, compiling it around the 10th century. Again, we know what changes that Rajaraja brought in, and 10th century is generally this game changer century that we have in Tamil Nadu's history. So during that time, I think bringing it inside the temple, making sure that you had you had the people employed to render them exclusively, though the tradition again existed. Not that it was invented new. It has been there, but it was popularized extensively. Every temple had its own the Azhwars and the arrayers to render the composition set to musical notes. And their presence was acknowledged by giving them a piece of agricultural land or set portions of prasadams. And this made sure that the padigams got rooted so well that you cannot separate them from temple, from rituals, from worship protocol.
Correct. And they exist to this day.
Exactly. It's a brilliant formula. Amazing. It's a brilliant formula, a very successful formula, in fact.
Amazing. Yeah. We have a few questions quickly. I will run through them. So I don't want our viewers to be disappointed. A couple of questions from Srinivas Nagaraja. The first is there anything similar to the Tirutondar Padigam which is for Nayanmars? Do we have something similar for Azhwars? Which
not from the time of the Azhwars. Not from the time of the Azhwars. As I told you, the first attempt in making a list of the Azhwars, their chronology and all that in poetry happens during the time of Manavala Mamunigal. That's around 14th century. In fact, Sri Kanchi Prativadi Bhagara Manangaracharya, I'm told, and I quote, says that it was after the invasion that we have gone down so low that even basic information about the chronology of the Azhwars were lost. So Manavala Mamunigal had to, in fact, he says, that the order is actually chanted. Arulmaran Cherelargon, Tuya Battanadan, Anbardal Tuli, Narpanan Nankalian, Idivar Totratu Adaivamingu. He says this is the list in which they were born. So it was, and then he goes on to identify the birth, month, and star, their Avadara Stalams, all that. I think that tabulation happens in the form of a poetry during his time.
Yeah. Similarly, also in the same thing in Sanskrit, Budam Sarasya
Magadahoya Pattanada, Kaniyan and all that.
Have,
the listing of the Azhwars.
Yeah, listing in that particular order comes up. The second, also another question from Srinivas Nagaraja. Any specific reason why Ravana Garvabhangam is so prominent in Sambandar and upper songs? Do they also praise Ravana as one with all great qualities?
Not at all. This is a topic of discussion for the past 100 years in Saiva tradition about Ravana being identified as a proud Shiva devotee and that we are all his followers. See, there are occasions where even Ravana is in fact appointed as one of the Nirmalya Murtis for Shiva. But that is for people who approach Shiva with a Rakshasa Guna. That's a different case altogether. His Garvabhangam has been spoken time and again because being a devotee himself, he couldn't win over Ahankara. And when he couldn't do it, Shiva had no second thoughts but to put him in place. So we have extensive documentation of what happened in different verses about him parking his chariot, getting down, trying to push it, pull it, to disturb it and all that. And as far as upper is concerned, there is a popular theory that when Ravana got trapped under the Kailashas, the lofty Kailasha, it is believed that there is one Maharishi, a Kailasha resident, who walked close by and seeing his plight, suggested that he performs a Veena concert then and there. He says, if anything, Shiva will melt for a good musical offering, he will forgive you. And that is when this popular theory of him plucking one of his head and his arm to play the Veena there happens. It is in fact said that Maharishi is called as Vakisar, who in his next birth came down as Appar, who is also called as Vakisar. So probably there is this one connect that Appar had to make that as the theme for his 10th song in all his padigams.
Okay. Another question now from Parvati Ravi Kumar. Karaikal Ammayar has not composed any songs in the maternal aspect, despite Swami calling her Ammai. I don't know whether this Ammai refers to like my mother rather than a honorific for a woman.
I think Periyapuranam clearly says, he in fact, check it out, quotes Swami telling, Nammai penum Ammai kan. He introduces Ammayar to Parvati Devi when she asks, who's this in the skeletal form that's attempting to climb the Kailasha? Who is she? Swami answers, Nammai penum Ammai kan, the one who takes care of me, my mother. It is quite a maternal approach with which he says is what the traditional scholars have always been telling. Yeah, that's quite a question. But generally, in Shaiva Siddhanta, we don't look upon Shiva as a kid.
Yes.
This tradition is never there. He's beyond birth. Pirava Yakai Periyon. The same reason why there is no single Pillai Tamil that exists for Shiva.
Right.
If a Shaivite ever wants to compose a Pillai Tamil in male gender, the easy choice is Muruga. Or in some cases, even Jnanasambandar and other acharyas have been the theme for Pillai Tamil. There is no Pillai Tamil for Swami because he is beyond birth and death. So this maternal connect is a very pure approach from Swami to certify her love at that level.
Okay. Balaji Ramkumar has a question. Early Tamil literature has revolved around singing praises of Shiva and Vishnu. While Abhirami Andadi was created around 1700s, has there been any prominent work on Devi around the Sangam period or post-Sangam period?
No, not any individual work, but many references to her attributes, again, her physical, the divine appearance, her relationship with Shiva, all that is said in the Sangam compositions, as I said. And Mahalakshmi being a resident of Mahavishnu's divine manifestation, again, she's sitting as a Shivatsam on his chest, and she being an embodiment of wealth, prosperity, all of that finds reference. But no individual work. No.
Not, tens of hundreds of verses.
No. Not. But Devi has been praised both in Shaivite tradition and Vaishnavite tradition, no doubt about it. Both Parvati and Mahalakshmi have been praised in and out completely, because her presence is very significant for both of them. But she being an independent, deciding authority, like how Abhirami Bhattar looks upon her, no, that has never been there. Same reason why we don't see a temple completely dedicated to Devi as old. Not many, at least. I think for Kanchipuram, I don't see any other temple as popular and as antique, exclusively dedicated to her.
Correct. Dr. Shivaram has a question. Does Sekidar mention the kind of sources for his compilation?
No. See, there is this order wherein we say Sekidar's work was preceded by Nambiyandar Nambi's similar chronicling of life history of the Nayanmars around the 10th century. But that was again like 1 or 2 verses for each of the Nayanmars, like 4 lines.
That's all.
And Sundarar had just 1 line dedicated for each of them. So that's the Togai Nool. Sundarar's is Togai Nool. It's a compilation, simply a Togai. This is a Vadi Nool. Nambiyandar Nambis. And then you have the Viri Nool, which is an expansion of it. Virithu Solludal.
Right. Now, see, because you did talk about the fact that he had done extensive research, right? We are perhaps approaching research in the modern way, where we give footnotes.
Bibliography and footnotes. No, nothing like that. Nothing like that.
So
I meant research for data collection. Nobody had attempted that extensive data collection for chronicling life history. So that way it is amazing.
So in a sense, he would have been about 400, 500 years away from the earliest of the Nayanmars.
Assuming that he's from the 12th century. Yeah. Assuming he's from the 12th century. Yeah. 500 to 600 years.
So 600 or even 700 in case of Karikalamaya. And couple of 100 years to the other extreme, in a sense. The research would be more about the place, how to reach the place. Even that would have changed substantially over these 500 years.
Exactly. Right? In fact, what amazes me is his lengthy documentation of the pilgrimages that Appar and Sambandar did, especially these two. Of course, Sundarar also. He in fact talks about which was the next temple that he visited. And in some places, he just says plainer, he says, a few other temples in and around were also visited. Yeah, then he goes on to say, from here he went there. And there are occasions where he came back to the same place again for some other reasons. Yeah, so that is, I'm still awestruck. I'm not sure if he actually traveled the entire distance to find out, what temple was how far, what would have probably been his route and all that. It is quite an extensive documentation. See, I personally believe there should have been some works which had attempted chronicling life histories before Shekidar's time, probably individual works only on Sambandar or only on Tirunavukarasar, which should have been a secondary source of information for Sekidar to study and compile. As you said, the painting of Sundaramurthy Swamigal's life history at the Sandararai in Tanjavur Periya Kovil, I think the feast cooking for Sundarar's wedding, even the crockery and all that, the painter had actually time traveled 250 years before.
Exactly.
I'm sure 300 years is a good time for changes in crockery and all that. I mean, I assume, putting it at par with what is happening now. Yeah, so, but the painting apparently depicts what happened in the 8th century. Right. Yeah, so there's a good 2 centuries difference, and but the painter had managed to get information. So if a painter could get this, I think a chief minister and a senior advisor council for the Chola king would have managed other sources of information. And I personally believe there should have existed some works which should have been a secondary source of information to Sekidar Perumal.
We'll wind up with one final question.
Now, I have one question to ask.
Yeah, go ahead, Gauri. Ask.
I wanted to ask, is there anything similar to Bhakti literature in any other part of the country, like North India and all?
Not during the same time.
Not during the same time. But is there such a corpus at all?
Oh, yeah. We have the entire Varkari tradition, which is an extension, the Ramananda tradition, the Chaitanya school. To an extent, I'll in fact put the earliest
Veerashaiva tradition of Karnataka.
Of course, yes. The Panchacharyas and the Vachana Kavis. In fact, that is the basis for what we call as Carnatic to an extent. Their contribution towards structuring of Carnatic music and the verses and all that, which was probably nourished better by Purandaradasa much later and Annamacharya or Jayadeva. For Jayadeva is of course a Bhakti poet. And I
do you think they were influenced by what was written in Tamil Nadu, because this precedes
the content, there should have been an influence, because many of the Nayanmars are accepted by the Veerashaiva traditions too.
Yes.
In fact, most of them. And they have their own version of Peripuranam also, without much of a change. Unlike Upamanyu Bhaktavilasam or other later period works, not much of changes have been done. They follow the same tradition. Yeah. In fact, Shirutonda Nayanar's life history is so popular at Karnataka. Right. I was surprised to know that in Kerala, there is the monsoon tradition where a community of artists paint Shirutonda Nayanar's life history in a long canvas, scene after scene, visit houses, just in case, because it's monsoon, they don't get to perform. So they visit houses, tell the story, and get paid as paddy and pulses.
Oh. Yeah. No, I was quite surprised to see that in Lepakshi. It is depicted in painting and in sculpture.
The Veerabhadra school of the Veerashaivas, in fact, be it Lepakshi or some schools in Hampi and all that, definitely runs very close to the Nayanmar's life history. No doubt about it.
Yeah. So that question, in a sense, is what Ramki's question also is. What is the impact of Bhakti movement in northern and western states? Yeah, which in a sense, you have addressed it now.
Yeah. Basically. And they had a reason then with the Islamic invasion and the political change there, the entire political fabric changing and temples being brought down and all that. They obviously needed a movement, a very structured movement, in fact.
And we can clearly see Andal in Mira. You can travel and look at that kind of tradition.
Her approach was, yes, similar to, much after Krishna, not really sure if you could actually see him in person, get married or serve him. But her love was so strong that she believed that, yes, I will get along with him. Yeah, to an extent, yes. There are comparisons that way.
Yeah, it's one great thing that, we have been having reasonably good translations that are out there in English. And hopefully, that will take these works to the larger Indian audience. I think even now its impact, or its even the knowledge of these works is very minimal across India. And hopefully this talk can, if it helps reach a reasonable audience that are at least following Tamil Heritage Trust continuously, will be thrilled. Thank you, Madhu, for a wonderful talk on a very auspicious day of Vinayak Chaturthi. And thanks to you and all our viewers from Tamil Heritage Trust. We'll meet again next month, first Saturday, with yet another talk.
Thank you, Gauri ma'am, for putting it together.
Thank you.